keep you and your family in our thoughts and prayers over the last 2 weeks. It's good to see you back.
Thank you.
The next item up is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion on it?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Second. All right, going down the roll, Reverend Mack,
Aye.
Coates,
Yes.
Reverend Collins,
Yes.
Darby,
Yes.
Frazier.
Aye.
I vote yes. Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hollenshed,
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Okay. The next item up is a review of the public comments. We all got those earlier from Ms. Taylor. And moving beyond that, we've got a status CCSD reactivation task force. Dr. Postlewaite.
Thank you. I believe Maggie's going to put some slides on the screen, and while we're waiting for her to do that, I will say, preface presentation with 2 remarks. One, the communications team has worked incredibly hard with the high school principals, teachers, and students to create the virtual graduation ceremonies that will air this evening starting at 7 p.m. We are extraordinarily proud of their efforts and want to commend all their hard work in trying to make the virtual graduation part of the ceremonies very, very special for the students who are graduating this year. Secondly, I'll just start by addressing the question that Mrs. Darby posed a little bit ago. The state superintendent is proposing that school districts receive 5 additional instructional days for students in kindergarten through the 8th grade. Charleston County Schools would place these instructional days at the beginning of our calendar for next year. So rather than start on August 18th, students would start 1 week before that if they're in grades K through 8. Rather than have 180 instructional days, we would have 185 instructional days. Several parents have had concerns because they had vacations planned during this time. We have some teachers who might also have had vacations planned during this time. So those 5 extra days will not be counted as the part of the required 180, but we certainly hope that as many children as possible will take advantage of this opportunity to get back in the groove and get started with some of the work that they missed. I am ready to talk about the slides that you had up, Maggie. If we could get started on the quick update on the Safe Schools Restart Group. That's just the cover slide. This was an advisory group that met once so far to try to help us think about how to safely restart our schools as quickly as possible. The current reality is spelled out there for everyone to see. Unfortunately, when we had to close schools because of the pandemic, it disrupted the education of 50,000 students, their teachers and parents for the last 3 months of school. So we know that despite everyone's best effort, virtual education for most children doesn't come close to having the caliber, the quality of face-to-face instruction. Many of our children have fallen behind academically. The Northwest Evaluation Association estimates that the amount of mathematics learning that's lost could approximate 70%, and be as much as a 50% loss in reading. So we're anxious to get children back to school into some sort of normalcy. And we're hoping to return to full operational schedules just as quickly as we possibly can. If we go to the next slide, on this slide, we simply reiterate what I just said. Our desire is to restart school in August for all children with as much normalcy as possible. The safe restart in August will allow our children to return to normal learning activities and, as to the extent possible, normal extracurricular activities, although we'll have to phase that in a bit at a time and as approved by the South Carolina High School League. We're not entirely sure what our normal will look like in August, but we are beginning to think about how to plan for two options. One option would be for those parents who are ready for their children to come back to school, and the other would be a virtual school option, an online option for parents who aren't yet comfortable with their children returning to school. You'll notice that most of the public comments you received today were comments from parents who wanted to express a strong point of view one way or another about a safe return of children to school. Next slide, please. So what we'd really like to do, what we aspire to do, is to find a way to safely deliver all children to school who need the transportation without making multiple bus runs, which would require that we split our school days somehow. So we want to try to find a way to transport all children who need it. And secondly, we want to find a way to set up as many classrooms as possible that can function on Monday through Friday schedule. We know that that's in children's best interest. And then third, we want to find a way to safely feed kids and make sure that we put protocols in place to ensure that they are safe as can be possible during the COVID-19 virus. In this picture, we see children in another country, and if you look closely, you see plexiglass dividers built around the desks. We are exploring now the possibilities of those kinds of dividers that could be used in addition to some social distancing, but if we could use barriers such as those, we may be able to bring more children back into a classroom setting if their parents are interested in their doing that. Next slide, please. What we did on Friday with the Safe Restart Committee was to simply review the mission, the guiding principles that I just talked about. We talked a little bit about what we're doing now to get ready for the reopening of schools, our current understanding of classroom capacities, the bus transportation realities, the operating issues that we'll have to face. And then we talked about the fact that we are currently surveying parents, surveying teachers, and developing some scheduling options that have already been covered fairly well, I think, in the media. We then concluded the meeting by listening to the questions, concerns, and suggestions from those who were participating in the process. Next slide. We will align our efforts with the state efforts. There's the State Accelerate SC initiative underway. They take into consideration guidelines from DHEC and the Centers for Disease Control. We're also looking at the very well done regional report from the Regional Metro Chamber, which is called Reignite Charleston. There are very clear guidelines for various businesses to follow. And we found a lot of helpful advice in that document. So our approach will be aligned with the state recommendations as well as those that are developed by local businesses and in close conjunction with MUSC and DHEC. Next slide. These are the task force members. I believe this information is already made public. In addition to the task force, we are forming an advisory committee representing teachers from every school with a planned way for teachers from each school to be able to tune in to 2 different sessions that we will have and pose their questions and concerns so that their ideas and suggestions are part of the process as we go along. And then finally, 3 slides, I'll just show you the things that we discussed with the task force members. If we go to the next 3 slides, we talked about the need to focus on recovery of learning and the continuity of learning. Carolyn Belcher, our Chief Academic Officer, and our Learning Services team are working on a number of approaches to make sure that our children, that we assess where kids are and that we move their learning forward just as quickly as we possibly can. On the next slide, we talked a bit about the logistical considerations. Jeff Baroe, the Chief Operating Officer, and Nitz our Director of Health Services, talked about the protocols that we are currently considering, and whether or not things like children wearing face masks would be optional or required, or whether it's something that CDC and DHEC say we shouldn't concern ourselves with at all. So the whole idea of children wearing face masks is a decision that hasn't been made. We certainly would want children to have the option to do that if parents felt it was in their best interest. At all aspects of our facilities, including HVAC, the custodial, transportation, meal services, and so forth. And then the final slide, the considerations, talks about some different areas of revised business practices, the impact of the pandemic on finances, the impact on our own personnel and staffing. We have several staff members who fall under the CDC guidelines for those who have to take great care. We have to plan in the emergence of the virus in a hotspot sort of situation. And then our communication and engagement strategies will have to change drastically to make sure that we have did well and engaged families, earned the confidence of those who are interested in sending their children back to school, and options for those who don't yet feel that that's safe. And we closed out the meeting with the final slide, just talking about the cadence of meetings. We hope by July 10th to have firm recommendations ready that we could bring to the board on July 20th at your meeting. And then we talked a little bit about the things that we will discuss at our next meeting, the survey results, the guidelines that we'll have in more detail from the state. We'll have more information then on the school start date and the most feasible schedules that we can develop. And then we'll begin developing a frequently asked questions document. So that's basically where we are. Our goal is to bring as many children back quickly as possible, and of course, under the safest imaginable conditions. We'd like to avoid split schedules if we could. We know we'll be able to do that in some schools, whether we'll be able to avoid partial schedules, some students one day, some students another in other schools, is still a question that we're considering. But the team is working hard, and we'll continue to connect not only with these task force members, but with others from the community who wish to provide feedback. Thank you for this time to review the school start back plans to date.
Thank you. I know that a lot of people had a lot of questions, so I hope this clears it up. Are there any questions from us?
Yes.
Reverend Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Postleigh, for your update. I have a quick, I know it's premature right now and early, but just in case school is open, and we discover that in a school, we have several people that have contracted the virus, and maybe it's a month into school, maybe it's a month into school already, maybe we're six weeks in. Do we have a plan of action? We found out that there are people in the school that do have the virus. What would be our action plan?
There will be an action plan. We'll work very closely with the Medical University of South Carolina and with DHEC. They will have guidelines that we are to follow, and there will be very clear metrics about, first of all, there are guidelines to follow when even one person is found to test positive for COVID-19. There are very clear notification processes that we're to use. We're working now with the MUSC, talking about the kind of dashboard that we might use that would create transparent and identify what constitutes enough cases that we're at risk of creating a hotspot. So those are all the things we have to think about and work out in detail before we would think to reopen schools.
Do you think that if it is the case that certain children or certain adults have the virus in a certain classroom, that everyone would have to get tested?
We'll follow the DHEC guidelines on that, Reverend Collins. Jeff Barowie and Ellen Nitz are talking now with a couple of different organizations about how best to conduct the testing. So I'm not going to speculate on that further, but I will tell you we'll take the advice of the medical experts.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? None? Okay, I guess that was very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
So summer master plans is next.
Right. Carolyn?
Yes, and Maggie, appreciate you calling up the slides. So as I like to say, we're doing a lot right now. In addition to closing out school and planning for graduation, for the board priorities, which we presented on last board meeting, and getting ready for school reopening, as Dr. Postaway just highlighted, we're also planning a summer acceleration program. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to hear from the team that's been working very hard on this. Our big approach on this is that because of the scale of the district, we had to start planning over 2 months ago, and we wanted to serve as many students as possible. So we went through a process to identify that, which the team will talk through with you. But that's how this is framed, is to make sure that we can maximize our reach. So that's why we chose a blended approach of both virtual and in-person programming. Michelle?
Good afternoon to the Board of Trustees and Dr. Postaway. As Dr. Belcher has mentioned earlier, our planning team met for several months to develop plans for the summer semester to provide additional instructional services to our most needy students in grades K through 12 across the district. In the presentation to follow, you will hear various opportunities offering a hybrid of either face-to-face or virtual instructional platforms to be offered across the district during the month of June and July. For the elementary and middle school grades, the planning team used winter map and bridge benchmarking data to identify roughly 8,000 students in K through 8th grades performing within the 1st through 10th percentile in the areas of reading, math, or both. As of current, we have the teacher workforce to serve roughly 3,350 students in grades K through 8. So we develop a district-wide prioritization formula for each grade level based on academic need and engagement during the extended closure and a need for specialized instruction. We will work our way up that prioritization list as spots become available. So we want to make sure that we're able to fill every spot. Finally, the summer offerings will be covered by various sources, such as South Carolina Read to Succeed, Federal Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, IDE, and GOF. For face-to-face services, we're preparing to serve 120 elementary students, 60 at 2 elementary campuses, which is Shakora, that comprises of Shakora and Mary Ford attendance zone, and Sanders Clyde, and students at the middle school at Simmons Pinckney. And we were able to use our Title I funds to offer this face-to-face to take it to another level. For the virtual, we're aiming to serve 3,200 students virtually in grades 6 through 8, 800, grades K through 5, 2,400, and grades K through 3, 1,600. In addition to our summer school offerings, the Expanded Learning Department was involved with our planning, and they'll be operating 15 full-day Kaleidoscope camps for 4 weeks and will serve approximately 975 students. Next slide, please. Jessica.
Okay. Good afternoon, Jessica Richards. I'm going to talk to you a bit about the instructional program that we put in place for both the virtual and face-to-face programs we're really excited about the program that we've been able to plan for our students. So I'll start with the face-to-face program. The face-to-face program really replicates the previous Read to Succeed third grade reading camp program that we had in place. The data from that program shows that we've had a profound positive impact on student performance. And so we set out to basically replicate that program that has a track record for success in building out additional grade level programs. So very much so, I've presented to you all in the past, we're aiming to keep that program. The additional change to that would be that we added a mathematics component this year. It's a full instructional day starting at 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. It has phonics, word work component included, various read alouds. It has small group instruction throughout. The student teacher ratio is 6:1. So even within that 6:1, we'll be able to create small groups and work individually with students. There'll be a writing component, the math component that I mentioned. We have worked in a social emotional curriculum. We added that last year to the third grade camp, and we're replicating that for all of the additional grade levels, K-8. We're also utilizing Second Step. In addition to our instructional program, we'll be working with community partners such as Engaging Creative Minds. The Charleston Museum will be coming in. All will be recognizing appropriate social distancing parameters when doing these activities with our students. We are also excited to add yoga. We have some jump roping pieces. We'll be providing the mats and the jump ropes to our students. So that we can, again, recognize that social distancing parameters, but still make it engaging and enriching for our students. Kaleidoscope will be offering free of charge aftercare to all of our students attending the face-to-face camp. And so at 2:30, the parents and families would have the option of enrolling their students, or their children, excuse me, for the 2:30 to 5 o'clock enrichment portion of their day. Bus transportation is provided. All meals are provided, including dinner, and we'll also be providing meals for the weekend on Friday when the students leave us. Obviously, the students will be receiving books, quite a bit of books. Each student will get their own bag of books, upwards of 11 books that they'll be taking home with them at the end of the camp. I think Michelle spoke with you earlier in regards to the expanded learning Kaleidoscope programs that'll be running in addition to our programs. That's also shown here on this slide, that Jason Saccharin will be operating 15 full Kaleidoscope camps in addition to our 3 camps. Now I'm going to speak a little bit about the virtual program. So the 3,200 students that will not be participating in our virtual program, or excuse me, our face-to-face program, will be participating in our virtual program. Each of those students will receive a live 40-minute small group instructional lesson by either a reading teacher or a mathematics teacher. So the students will alternate every other day. They'll receive either instruction in reading or mathematics. That is with a 5-to-1 teacher-student ratio. The lessons are very interactive, meaning everything that we would set out to do in a live face-to-face instructional format with students, we aim to do that virtually. Students will have the platforms that have been purchased through the University of Florida, and McGraw-Hill will enable our teachers to basically execute each piece of those reading and math lessons that we would do face-to-face virtually with our students. We also have the luxury of a little bit more time now, and so our teachers will be receiving specialized instruction on how to harness the best pieces of those e-learning platforms to make it as interactive and as engaging as possible. In addition to that 40 minutes of live instruction, students would have access to additional lessons that they could kind of access at their leisure, or when their schedule permits. We've been very mindful of making those pieces be accessible to students with minimal parent input needed or support needed for students to engage with those lessons. We have targeted our special education teachers. We have a social worker that will be employed at each of the 3 face-to-face sites. We have adequate site coordinators, and we have a full-time nurse at each of the face-to-face sites as well, to just make sure that we're truly prepared and offering our students the best learning environments possible for the summer.
Okay, next slide. So Jessica just described what our K-8 programs would look like. Our high school program is going to be all virtual. So currently, the high school offerings will start early June for seniors who did not meet requirements for graduation. Virtual platforms will focus on credit recovery. This allows seniors the opportunity to complete required courses and graduate by August of 2020. In addition, high school principals have identified students in grades 9 to 10 who need summer credit recovery in math, 9 through 11, who need summer credit recovery in math, English, science, and social studies in order to maintain their graduation timeline. High school principals have also identified current teachers and counselors to directly work and support the progress monitoring of the students in the virtual programs. The funding sources for this level are GOF and Title I. In the Title I schools, the teacher-student ratio would be 10 to 1. In non-Title I schools, 15 to 1. So we're able to reduce the number of students per teacher in our Title I schools. Okay, next slide, please. Jen?
Good afternoon. Alternative programs will also be offering a summer semester option. We will operate at Daniel Jenkins as a site for all of our programs, grades 6 through 12. Our high school students from Clark and Daniel Jenkins have access to this program. We're working on credit recovery as well as initial credit with certified teachers on site to support instruction for those students. And that is funded through an EEDA grant that was previously awarded to Daniel Jenkins. Our middle school students, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, will receive daily instruction in ELA math from their certified teachers, and also work on content that they need to have replaced from the previous school year. All of our students will receive 1 hour of social emotional instruction using Second Step, and we will also have Department of Mental Health counselors on site for continued services with our students. We are staffing with our current teachers at all 3 of our locations, and they're all working on current ELA and math and SEL standards that we've already put in place throughout the year. We will have 14 students in grades 6 and 7 on site, 20 8th graders, and about 30 high school students. And we also have 9 students who are participating in the virtual summer program. And if for any reason any of the students do not accept an in-person invite, they will be added to the in-person program at Daniel Jenkins. Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So, CCSD recently received additional federal funds under Title III to serve 60 newcomer students in grades 6th through 9th grade. These are students who've been in the United States less than 3 years. The service provided will be a hybrid of virtual and face-to-face instructions offered in the evenings from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, targeting eligible populations living in the North Charleston area. As part of the grant offerings, parents will also be included in the learning process, and many lessons will be developed to help them engage in learning with their children. Thematic art-infused curriculum in our community will be utilized to focus on ELA, social studies, and science. Students will receive instruction and will receive face-to-face instruction and virtual field trips Monday through Wednesday for 1.5 hours each day. ESOL teachers will deliver food and materials on Mondays and Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. The last slide, please.
Afternoon. It is important to first mention that students with IEPs will be served in all of our summer semester programs. As Jessica mentioned, we are hiring certified special education teachers for our K-8 program, and we are partnering with the Department of Exceptional Children in order to ensure that the needs of students with IEPs are met. Extended school year services provide an additional layer of support for students with disabilities. ESY services are funded by IDEA and provided every summer to those students who are determined eligible by their IEP teams. Goals and service times are individualized to meet the needs of each student. Instruction is delivered by a certified education teacher or related services staff. The primary Model of delivery for ESY services will be virtual. However, the Department of Exceptional Children will provide face-to-face services for those students who demonstrate the need. The date of ESY services delivery will be from June 9th to August 7th. Devices will be provided to all students as well as any other supplemental materials that are needed.
Okay. So in closing, it is our goal to provide a structured student summer experience to stay engaged and add another platform for them to keep their academic skills polished, and in some cases, hopefully make it possible for them to move ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I keep track of what's going on in other parts of the country with other school districts. And you've gone over and above what I've been seeing going on in other districts. So thank you so very much. Any questions from board members?
Yes.
Go ahead, Reverend Collins.
Okay, so I guess the chief academic officer probably answered. How will we accomplish the goal of the 10-to-1 ratio for teacher student and 15-to-1 for student teacher ratio? How would that be accomplished?
It's actually less
how will we get
than that. We've already started the recruiting process for teachers, Reverend Collins, and that's what Michelle had highlighted at the beginning, is that we had aimed to try to serve 5,000 kids all in through the virtual programs as well as the face-to-face programs. We're fully staffed for the face-to-face programs. The virtual programs, right now we can serve approximately 3,000 or so. And that is at a smaller ratio of 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. And now we talked about it through the lens of the student experience. If you're a teacher, you're teaching the same lesson to multiple small groups virtually throughout the day. So that's how we're doing it. It's not quite the number we were hoping for, but much more than we've offered historically.
Are you speaking about recruiting certified teachers or substitute teachers?
Yes,
or
it's all certified. Yeah, it's all
teachers?
certified. No, all certified teachers. And because we're following the Read to Succeed curriculum that Jessica here led a lot of our work in, we know that program has accelerated learning before. So that's the foundation of what we're using for kids that were behind grade level, so we wouldn't have to retain them. So we're really using that to accelerate instruction in K-8 in a very fast, very based in reading science. We're partnering with the Lassiter Center to make sure all of our instructors, certified teachers, are getting trained in that approach and are ready to do that work. In addition, we're also using our own math curriculum, which again is the new curriculum, but highly regarded nationally, to found it as the foundation for the math lessons, which is something that we're offering again K-8.
Lastly, approximately how many new teachers have you hired or expect to hire to accomplish your goal? To me, you would need a whole lot of teachers. You could have 10-to-1 and 15-to-1 in our classrooms. So how many additional teachers roughly you looking at hiring?
Michelle, I'm not sure how many teachers that we've got hired now. Do you have that number that would be helpful, or have a commitment
or what is
from?
the goal? Or what's the goal? What's the hired goal?
I want to be sure that Dr. Reverend Collins is not referring, when I said the 10-to-1 to 15-to-1, that was in the high school services. So, and we were able to accomplish that by hiring additional teachers using Title I funds on top of the GOF funds to provide more teachers to be able to serve smaller groups of students. I'm gonna ask Lisa or Jessica to address the current number that we have hired for the K-8.
So we're in the process actually of hiring. Students have applied. We'll be issuing letters of agreement this week. Based on the numbers of teachers that have applied, we will be hiring 160 teachers for our certified teachers for our virtual program and 26 for our face-to-face program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? I guess that answered it all. Thank you so very much.
Priscilla, I've got a couple of quick ones. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Two quick ones. I know we were getting all the technology back from virtual learning for the school year. I assume some of these slides mentioned devices being provided, not all did. So I want to make sure A, it's being reissued, and then B, making sure that we don't find ourselves where we did at the end of the school year with a number of folks that didn't have access regardless of having a device, they may not have had Wi-Fi. So one, I want to just make sure that's been contemplated. And then the other part is probably a Don question, is the GOF impacts, and is that already built into our second reading, or do we anticipate additional funding from the state that we don't know yet about?
So we are going to redistribute devices to the students that need them, and we're exploring with Jeff's department whether Wi-Fi buses, which would be an additional expense, but whether that would be an option for those students who don't have regular Wi-Fi access, in addition, obviously, to being able to get close to the school and use Wi-Fi access outside the physical school, but in that way. So, but we're going to make sure the kids who are in the virtual program have the right equipment. I will defer to Don on the budget, but again, the timing of I think the state is working very hard to provide additional funding to provide a meaningful summer program for kids. At this point, the focus is K-3. We wanted to go to K-12, and those dollars haven't yet been released. So we worked hard to try to figure out through primarily special revenue funds how to cover this to make sure we could offer it to as many students as possible. But Don can answer the more specific question.
Yes, there are three components, as Ms. Belcher has indicated. So the special revenue, we're still waiting for input from the state. The Board of Economic Advisors meet on June the 11th, which is this Thursday. We hope to have some additional information from the state following that meeting. And then in the first and second reading of the budget, there's a $3.1 million placeholder as a starting point to help get this up and running. So between the placeholder of 3.1 million, the exploration of the use of special revenue funds, and then what we hope to get from the state, then we'll pull together a more comprehensive financial plan, bring it to the board. And of course, in the fall, once the state adopts its budget, we will bring to the board a revised fiscal 21 budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, all of you, for all the work. The 2021 school calendar information.
Thank you. We don't need any action from the board on this tonight, but if we do need to revise our calendar, we needed to apprise you of that tonight in the event we need to put a calendar revision on the June 20th board agenda. So right now, our students are all scheduled to return on August 18th. If the state funds 5 additional days to develop 2 calendars, one that is the 180-day calendar and one that is a calendar for the additional 5 days, there's a possibility high schools might want to start a little earlier and then redistribute their 180 days, but we've not had any input from teachers or students regarding that possibility. So this is simply here for a placeholder so that we are reserving the right to back as an action item on the 20th should we need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, anyone? Okay, D, CCSD granted approval by the Education Oversight Committee to participate in cohort 3 of e-learning pilot program.
Thank you. And this is simply another information item, which means that in the future, if we are forced to close schools because of inclement weather, such as hurricanes, because we've been able to figure out how to serve the vast majority of our children with online learning, we could use that as a means of making up the instruction, and we would not then have to schedule makeup days for students. If we understand the grant correctly, it would also allow students who've been suspended from school to continue their studies through an online approach and at least access the lessons and complete their homework. So this is, again, an information item, just letting you know that we have received permission to be among those districts that is given the option of making up days through our online capacities.
Okay, thank you. That's one good thing that came out of COVID. Early college, high school schedule update.
At this point, we don't need to update the board. This is a placeholder. As you may remember, early college wanted to better align its schedule with the schedule of Trident, but we also asked the leadership there to ensure that there was not any conflict necessarily with athletics or homeschool calendars. They've got a proposal on that, but right now Bobby Roberts is working with the state to work through that, as the state seems to be a little bit more flexible on calendars right now. So we should come back to the board, hopefully, if we need board authorization at the next board meeting. So I wanted to make sure I put a placeholder to tag that for you all.
Okay, thank you. Questions, board? Okay, that's the end of the Strategic Education Committee portion.
All right, next item up is the Audit and Finance Committee meeting review. There were 3 action items that'll be coming to our next meeting. The capital maintenance budget reallocation, just moving around dollars that we'd already budgeted. Phase 5 master plan, and then finally the second reading of the budget. Are there any questions on that? All right, here none. The next item up is for information. It's the Families First Coronavirus Act review and policy implications. Ms. Ham.
Hey, thank you. Good to see all of you. Hi, this is actually your very first temporary administrative rule. This goes in conjunction with a policy that we actually combined late last year. We combined the 2 leave policies for classified staff and other staff into one. And so before you, you have a copy of the School Boards Association version of the administrative rule that basically addresses leave effective from April 1st of 2020 to December 31st of 2020 with regards to issues related to COVID-19. It addresses all of the federal requirements under the Act. If you take a look at it, you can just see that it gives emergency paid sick leave for a certain categories as well as additional FMLA. If you have any questions, we do have Mr. Brigman here, who is more of an expert on this one than I am, but it is pretty self-explanatory. I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
Anybody have any questions on it? All right, then the next item up is action item for, there were 2 words changed on policy DFG. Is there a motion on that or any questions on it?
I'll move to approve.
We've got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I'm sorry, I also have a question.
Okay, and it's discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So I see why we're changing the dates and aligning the dates, but we recently also received a update from the district on tuition collected, and there was some significant amounts of tuition not collected as of the date of that letter, which was towards the end of the school year. So my question is, can we still effectively collect the tuition, and or what is the option for students who are September 30th in and we're not able to collect tuition?
Cindy and the rest of the board, in review, this is Joyce. Okay. In reviewing this policy change, the recommendation that came from staff, we realized that we do not have a policy to enforce a policy that provide guidelines on collecting tuition. So in the discussion of this, we will be working on developing a policy to bring to the board on collection procedures when parents have failed to provide the tuition that they should be paying. So we'll try to get you guys that by maybe by our next meeting.
Thank you. I would, if we're going to do that, Joyce, and thank y'all for finding that gap and working on that. Let's try to have that policy brought to us so that it can be enforced for the 2020-2021 school year.
Yes, ma'am. We will.
I did. I'm sorry, Ms. Green, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Natalie, I heard you making a comment.
No, I was just going to say that I wanted to just mention this to the board that before this school year, outstanding tuition has not been an issue. It's typically been just one family who eventually paid before the next school year. So this is very new for this district.
Okay, and Ms. Green, I apologize. I'll turn it back over to you. This is your committee. So.
You have my permission to keep moving.
Okay, all right.
So
Then is there any?
vote.
Okay, going around the horn, Reverend Mack.
Aye.
Ms. Coates,
Yes.
Reverend Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Darby,
Yes.
Ms. Frazier.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hollenshed,
Aye.
and Ms. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Okay, the next item up is the naming of Mary Ford Elementary School. Is there a motion or any questions on that?
Move to approve the recommendation to be named the Mary Ford Early Learning and Family Center.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Green seconded it. Any further discussion?
A question.
Okay,
So Dr. Postlewaite, with the name change, does it also mean that the school will get a new badge code, or will it still have the same badge codes? Did my question come through?
it did.
It
I heard
did.
you.
It should have the same beds code, sir. Sorry. I don't know if Dr. Postman is able to get off mute.
So it'll still be identified as Mary Ford? Just changing the name to enhance the.
We're changing the
or-
name. It still has the same code from the state, and we're letting the state know that we're changing the name. So the name at the state level will reflect the name change.
Mary Ford, I don't have it in front of me now in my vehicle, but Mary Ford, Early Learning Center?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, then going around the horn, Reverend Mack,
Yes.
Ms. Coates,
Yes.
Reverend Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Darby,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hollenshed,
I vote yes, but I want a clear definition on that bed code situation.
okay. So can somebody from staff then just send that in writing to Mr. Hollenshed with an explanation on that?
Well, we'll get the details. We keep the same beds code, but we do have to inform them of the grade level change. So we'll get the details out in a board brief.
Okay. All right. And then the final vote, Ms. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Okay. That was our final item for voting on. We will, upcoming meetings are there, June 8th, June 22nd, and July 20th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second. All in favor by voice vote? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right, we will adjourn. Ms. Taylor, are you just clicking on to the other link right now?
No, you just